Oh, you're taking from that angle, eh?
Oh, because
Dahsyat. Kenapa tak ambil angle sini?
nanti kalau situ tak nampak macam tak bercakap Melayu macam ni, nampak dia
yeah.
ha. Boleh sound check sikit.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me proper?
Alright.
Jadi tak takut sometimes there's a screeching noise because of the checker. Sometimes it.
Okay. If you want to hide the wire inside lah, kalau tidak nampak just put it inside. That'll be alright.
Okay. Right.
Yep.
Okay. Alright, great. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, today we are with Datuk Madani Sahari from MAI, and we're going to talk about the state of the auto industry for 2017 and also something a bit longer term about the future, the technology for the future, and where we want the automotive industry to go in terms of technology and also in terms of our energy usage. So maybe we can start with you reiterating your State of the Union, the address of State of the auto industry.
Okay, alright. Yeah, the energy efficient vehicle, I believe. Let's address that first. From the angle of energy efficient vehicles, the EEVs. Well, when the government introduced the NEP 2014, which is the third edition of the NEP, the energy efficient vehicle took the center stage. And energy efficient vehicle, firstly, let's define it. It is not only about electric vehicles. Yeah. So initially there have been a lot of confusion. People equating EEV, energy efficient vehicle, to electric vehicles. It's not. So under EEV are the whole range of technologies such as internal combustion engine that are still using gasoline, petrol, and diesel. There are hybrids, definitely. They are even biofuel, gas plus petrol, as in many of the taxis, including as well electric vehicles, and also future technologies such as fuel cell, hydrogen fuel cell, etc. So, energy efficient vehicles are vehicles, regardless of the technology that the vehicle is using in the powertrain. What's important is it is using less fuel, meaning consuming less fuel, and also emitting lower carbon. And therefore, there is a standard in the NEP 2014 that indicates, according to the curb weight of the vehicle, what should be the amount of fuel used to drive that car for 100
So what was the main reason for making an EV an important priority?
Okay. The main reason, one of the main reasons, making EV as the center stage of our NEP 2014 is, and still is, making Malaysia as a hub of technology uptake in the areas of future cars, future vehicles. Now, to produce a car that is energy efficient in nature, it actually requires technology. Not only technology in the powertrain, but the entire vehicle configuration has to adopt technology that will make the car lighter, but at the same time the car has got to meet that safety level, as Malaysia is a member to the VP29 and therefore meeting the minimum UN safety, the minimum safety UN regulation. Yeah. So even that's weight. Apart from weight, there is also the whole ergonomics of car that has got to be less resistant to air. Yeah, even the tires, when the tires are rolling on the road, the tires have got to be less resistant as it rolls on the road, and the powertrain has got to be using technology that are very that are able to produce high power but using lower fuel. So by making Malaysia as a hub for energy efficient vehicle, in a way, we are telling the manufacturers that you need to bring technology in producing your cars in Malaysia. And we know 80% of components of a car are actually coming from the vendors. So we are also saying that the vendors need to migrate from a conventional technology to a high technology to align their processes and their components to the needs of a car to become safer, but at the same time also to become more fuel efficient in terms of consumption. And the other bigger picture is the world. The world trend is moving towards green mobility, emitting lower carbon and using or consuming less energy or less fuel. So we are actually preparing Malaysia, when we announced the NAP, preparing Malaysia, the ecosystem of the automotive industry in Malaysia, preparing them to move towards the global trend, because we know eventually Malaysia has got to start exporting. We need to be a hub in the region, and there's no other way to become a hub, and there's no other way to export until and unless we have reached a level where technology has been properly deployed, adopted and adapted in the vehicles that we are producing.
So right now, what we have is companies assembling their EVs here, apart from maybe Perodua and possibly Proton, who might be manufacturing the cars here. We only have people assembling. So out of that, it doesn't seem to the man on the street that the vendor community are able to support the EV sector in any meaningful way, because most of the technology that's required to make the car actually EV, we are not capable of doing it. So what's the plan for making the vendor community more able to support, and how long are we going to take to get there? What's the target?
That's a great question. This is a perception that has to change, and I think it's good that we have interviews like this to inform the public what has been achieved and what has been done. Now, when Malaysia announced Malaysia to become the hub of energy efficient vehicle, of course you are right in saying that Proton and Perodua manufacture their cars, and therefore the research and development of Proton and Perodua are designed to become for the products to become EEV right from the beginning. So there's a lot of spin-off, and it contributes a lot to vendors and also to the OEM, to the supply chain in terms of upgrading their research, their capabilities, their design, their technology to align to the needs of Proton and Perodua. Now that's Proton and Perodua. Now let's look at Honda. Honda, what used to be just an assembly plant, Honda has also set up their R&D center in Malacca because of the need to do EEV. That's Honda. So Honda now deploys, from what they started with only 5 engineers, they've got now more than 30 engineers in their R&D center as a start for them to develop more the energy efficient requirement in the cars that they are producing in Malaysia. And Honda is also making Malaysia as a hub for hybrid production. And hybrid is about technology, and we've got to remember Honda, from what used to be only about 200 million worth of localization, they have now increased that localization to almost 2 billion worth of localization, and it benefits the vendor. Now, if the vendors are not able to produce this 2 billion worth of localization, vendors won't be able to supply back to Honda. So there's been a plan right from 2013 onwards to prepare our vendors, to align them to the requirements of Honda. And because of this alignment, Honda set up their R&D center so that their R&D center could help and has been helping the vendors to fine-tune their processes, their technology, to fine-tune it to the needs and requirements of Honda. So that's Honda. Let's talk about Mazda. Mazda, same thing. From Thailand, they diversified their business into Malaysia, and now they are using Inocom, and they've expanded their process in Inocom. They've expanded the paint shop, they've got their new body shop, welding, and they've got their new assembly shop, and they are producing AEV, energy efficient vehicles here in Malaysia, and also meant for export. Now, Mazda did it a bit different. They have yet to have an R&D center in Malaysia, but what they did was they get their Japanese vendors in Japan to coexist with Malaysian vendors. So MAI, we played that role together with Maitrade and Maida. We organized a few trips in Japan at the Mazda headquarters in Hiroshima to do that matchmaking. And now there are already close to 10 vendors that are now in coexistence between Malaysian and the Japanese vendor, whom are now supplying to Mazda in Japan, and now they produce their components here in Malaysia for Mazda Malaysia, and they are now making plans for them to also supply back to Mazda in Japan, and then, from these coexisting companies. And it's not majority Japanese, yeah? It's really 50-50.
Right.
So it gives a good equity shares between local Malaysian company and the Japanese company.
But in terms of really energy efficient technology specifically, I mean, components we probably can supply, the 2 billion whatever that Honda wants. It's just a matter of ramping up local production. But in terms of specifically EEV technology, what is the government doing to encourage the local vendors to improve their capability, or even research institute to improve their capability in supporting the industry in terms of EEV technology?
Yeah. When we announced the NAP 2014, we established at the same time, we also announced the 6 roadmaps. And one of the 6 roadmap is the Malaysian Technology Roadmap. So that's the roadmap that we are now implementing, using it as a reference, and to develop technologies that are obviously in line with energy efficient vehicle needs, and deploying it to our vendor community and even some to the OEM. Now, some of the things that are already implemented in the roadmap, number one, we call it Design Engineering Program, DEP. So that has been implemented across more than 70 vendors, where we enhance their design capability. This is about design, engineering, and also about simulation of the components to make sure that it is designed in situ during the initial development of the component meant for a particular model. Yeah, so that's DEP 1. So we have now moved into DEP 2. DEP 2 is actually moving very specific into the process. While DEP 1 is very generic in terms of design capability, DEP 2 is moving into that very specific tooling design, as in plastic, as in metal, as in rubber, as in electrical components. Yeah? So that's also, we are moving very specific. Now, the technology roadmap itself also have listed a list of technologies together with the vendor community, and develop these technologies ready for commercialization. Now, example, there are projects that is now that has been, I would say, coming to a prototype. You know the glasses, the window glasses, which are made of glass. Even for bus, you know, the whole thing is made of glass, so it's very heavy. So because the glass is heavy, the mechanism for the windows to go up and down, you know, they are big. They are big. Now, one of the technology that we have developed with the vendor is to replace that plastic, so that glass to plastic. But then plastic, yes, it's light, you know, however, stretches, okay, and then it does not reflect the same property as glass. So we have developed a coating technology that able to convert the window, the plastic, to exhibit the same property as glass. And now it is moving to a prototype. The beauty of this is not only it's lighter, but the whole mechanism that is used to roll up and down will now become smaller because of the lighter weight. And actually, in countries like Europe, Citroën, Renault, Peugeot, BMW, you know, especially the rear window is all now made of plastics. You know, but of course, these technologies are very patented to that particular OEM, and now we are moving to prototyping that coating technology so that it can benefit vendors and it can produce for our OEMs here in Malaysia. So that's one of the examples. Okay. Another one is, we talk about electric vehicles, hybrid. So batteries is a very important component. Yeah, lithium batteries. So what we have done in accordance to the roadmap is, you know, for you to develop batteries, it comprises firstly of the raw material. Yeah, the raw material. Then from the raw material, it will go into producing the cells. From the cells, it will go into producing the modular assembly, and then we go into battery management system. So these are the key milestones to develop batteries. So what we have done is, we have developed the material, we have patented basically a process to optimize the production of the material, We have also patented the battery management system, and we are now also developing that cell and modular assembly. So all these will be done in Malaysia with an IP that belongs to Malaysia. And this
when can we see these Malaysian batteries?
We are hoping to start the assembly by end of this year or beginning of 2018. Commercial, because many of the hybrids vehicles in Malaysia are now using lithium-based batteries, and they are importing. So there's a need for us to start supplying this to Volvo, to Honda, who are going to start back their production of hybrids, to Mercedes-Benz, to BMW, to Mazda, and so on. So there's a whole list of models that are now on lithium batteries, and they want to localize their batteries.
As an aside, how are we looking at the national graphene roadmap, and where is that plugged into it?
But we have a roadmap on battery, and graphene is really towards the end is the ultimatum. From lithium, the moment graphene can be mass produced at a competitive price, graphene actually one of the best ultimate material to be used to build batteries.
Do we have a target right now on the graphene roadmap, or is it still quite far?
Graphene is able to be produced in small quantities, and it's very expensive.
Right.
So the work now is really to find ways to produce, to manufacture graphene, at a very cost competitive rate. So in terms of timeline, I would say the next between 3 and 5 years would be a good timeline for us to enable optimizing process to produce graphene that is at a manufacturer level.
So top manufacturers like BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, and also Toyota they're already like 15 years investing into carbon fiber structures. How far are we in terms of supporting that for the auto industry?
Yeah, earlier on I talked about the design engineering program, DEP1, and then the DEP2. Actually, we are starting now the composite DEP. The composite DEP meaning introducing composites into cars. So there's a list of vendors now that are coming with us. So it's another program that we'll be launching this year, which is to use composite to replace metal and to replace plastics even to some extent.
Do we have any indication from all the big players whether they're gonna start moving some of their composite construction to here, composite material components?
We have a strong composite manufacturer for aviation in Malacca, and they are very strong, CTRM and DK and so on. So they are quite strong. So now we are actually developing the composite vendors for automotive. So of course CTRM can participate as part of the supply chain, but we believe this opportunity to supply composite into cars, into vehicles, is again another opportunity to spin off, even as a diversification for those metal stampers to go into composite. So we know there are a few companies that are already thinking about it. That's why now there is this movement for MAI to kickstart this composite design engineering program 2017.
Okay, so we are talking about energy efficient vehicles, and the government has made a pledge to reduce our carbon footprint by 40%. As far as I know, most of the government roadmap right now, energy roadmap, does not include the transport sector. Does MAI have a plan for the transport sector in terms of its energy usage?
Well, the plan is to get to a number of energy efficient vehicles on the roads. That's the plan. Because we know the more we have, the lower carbon will be emitted.
What's the target?
So now, the target is by 2020, 80% of cars on the Malaysian roads will be adhering to energy efficient vehicle requirements. 80. Now, when we first launched the NEP 2014, it was in January.
What's the current number?
Exactly. Now let me explain from 2014. When we launched the NEP 2014 in January, by December the same year, we have reached 11% of EEV penetration on the roads. 11% of cars sold in Malaysia for that year. For that year, 11% was EEV.
So we're talking about 80% for that year.
80% for that year. Okay. Now, and then in 2015, that number has increased to 32%. Last year, that number has increased to between 40 and 41%. We have yet to finalize really the last decimal point for the EEV penetration in terms of sales for in the year 2016. This year, we are targeting at least 50% of cars sold in Malaysia will be energy efficient vehicle, and then 80% in the year 2020. Now, if we were to convert all those good EEVs that will be roaming on Malaysian road and emitting lower carbon, actually we could be from a transportation sector, we could lower the carbon emission from these EEV cars by as high as 60%, but really depends on the composition of cars that are going to be on the road by the year 2020.
Yeah. So total number of cars by 2020 will be what? 15%, 10%, 5%?
You see now there are 26 million cars roaming on Malaysian roads. 26 million vehicles on Malaysian roads. Out of which 12 million are cars, another 12 million are motorcycles, and then 1 something million commercial vehicles and so on and so forth. Now, by the year, of course, by 2020, we are estimating a total sales in Malaysia of 1 million, out of which 800,000 are EEV cars. Definitely, if you 800,000 you dilute into the 26 million, definitely it won't give much of an impact. So I believe that what we need to do is really to have a program to replace the old cars that are emitting high carbon, to replace this with cars that are I would say more green, safer, definitely, because now the newer cars are safer, and also cars that are more comfort, the higher level of comfort, and so on. So I believe that should be the next step. But this is a market force. We have opened up the auto industry, so it has been liberalized. So consumers are basically free. They have more choices. But the bottom line here is people who wants to buy new cars, they have a better array of cars which are more green than before, more safe than before, and exhibiting higher level of comfort more than before. I believe it will take time, for these new cars to replace the older generation cars, But how many of these really in 2020, given that EEVs have started to penetrate in the year 2014, until 2020, out of the 26 million, there will be 28, I'm not so sure how many million of cars that will be still roaming on Malaysian roads, and how many percent of that are EEVs?
Currently it's 26.
Now it's 26 million total.
So by 2020,
by 2020
nearer 30.
Nearly to 30 million, and definitely some percentage of that will become energy efficient vehicle, and how much are that contributing to the environment? Definitely, it is not, it's not that it will not be equal to the old cars that are still roaming on Malaysian road, but it's a good start for us to look into greening the environment from a mobility aspect. And not to forget the fact that now with the public transportation, people are using less cars, they're using public transportation. Even though there are 30 million cars potentially in the year 2020, but as long as these cars are not driven, they will not pollute the environment.
Well, that's the thing. Let's go into this public transport policy kejap. MRT, as it is right now, is very expensive for you to travel on the MRT. We can't figure out why it's so expensive. It should be cheaper if the government is serious about getting people to use the MRT, But maybe I don't know what the measurements are. So I think again here we're looking at what is the cost of the environment to the economy. As it is, we're looking at ways of tracking economic performance that disregards environmental factors, and nobody has come up with a good accounting to take into account for environmental costs. So we continue with our GDP without any concern for environmental costs. So for MAI, of course it's a conflict. You are champion of the auto industry. Now if more people use public transport, then less people will buy cars.
Well, we don't really see it from that angle. Number one, we talk MAI. We talk a lot about sustainable mobility. Okay, and what we refer to as sustainable mobility is the entire process that has to meet that green index. Okay, so to speak. Yeah. So we are not talking just about producing cars that are energy efficient vehicles, but we are also very concerned about the processes that are used to produce a car. The processes need to be green as well. For example, painting. If you keep on using solvent-based paint and not water-based paint, that's polluting the environment more than water-based. So that's why the NAP, actually, we have introduced customized incentive. Customized incentive refers to the merit of your business proposal, and the impact to environment is one of the important consideration in that evaluation. Okay, so we look not only at your product, but also across the process, across the supply chain to produce your product. That is as insofar as the NAP is concerned. So meaning we are promoting green. You know, you get more incentive as you green your processes and your product. That's one. Now, secondly, actually, by people using public transportation, we don't believe that will have an impact on sales of cars in Malaysia. And even if it has an impact on car sales in Malaysia, that's why all the time my minister, government, TOPA, and the government have been insisting that to grow the auto industry, the vehicle manufacturer need to look into export market. Malaysian as a market is just too small for the vehicle manufacturers to just think of the domestic market. They have to look over and above, and they have to start the export program. And again, the customer's incentive is also promoting the vehicle manufacturers to look the aspects of going outside of Malaysia, use Malaysia as your production base, and to export out of Malaysia. That's number two. Now, number three, in many countries that we have benchmarked, they have got very good public transportation, like Japan, Germany, Germany, Korea. The number of cars, South Korea, well, probably better than many of the other developed countries. Yeah, so they are not bad. If you look into the car population per 1,000, they are all above 650 per 1,000. Malaysia, we are still at about 380 per 1,000. So what I'm saying is, people in these developed countries, they still buy cars, but for them to enter the city center, they use public transportation. They buy cars because they need to use the car to go to the MRT station. And they buy cars for them to send their children to school, to go to the marketplace, and they buy a bigger car for them to go on a holiday. So in a way, people still buy cars, but for a different purpose. You know, for all these purposes, and as they enter the city center, as we enter Kuala Lumpur, we should be really leveraging and using the public transportation. Leave our car at the MRT station or at any public parking, you know, leave it there and come into KL using public transportation. I think that should be the way forward.
So the other thing that's interesting is that self-driving technology, apparently it's on the horizon already. And as we look at ride-sharing services merging with self-driving technology, the way that Uber is doing with Volvo and such in the US and also in Singapore, there are some industry people who say that in the future, perhaps car manufacturers will no longer be in the business of selling cars, but they might be in the business of providing transport pods. You know? So that would probably lead to consolidation because people will use less cars. In fact, if you ask teenagers now, 15, 16-year-olds, as I've asked my children's friends, many of them feel that there is no real need to buy a car in the future. So there is that already looming in the future. How do you see the auto industry in Malaysia adapting? And before that, how do you see the laws of the country adapting to autonomous driving cars? and how are we formulating already the legal framework to accept them? Because as it is right now, for example, Volvo is already offering the XC90 for year 2017 with pilot assist up to 140 kilometers. So they're virtually autonomous if you dare to drive them like that.
Yeah.